All right, let's see if we can't get a little further through this. I'll try to. I know I'm going to have to do some editorial comments, but I'll try my best to stay on topic here a little bit more. Sorry about the abrupt ending. Again, I ran out of room on my phone, so I deleted a few things, so hopefully we'll get a little further this time. All right, we left off right here. We kind of covered that paragraph in one video for 38 minutes. Let's see. When the separatists and pilgrims departed from the shores of England, they said goodbye Babylon, goodbye Rome, the common law. And I've got some stuff on the computer screen. We'll discuss that here real quick. And the Holy Bible, which is we could say the law of nature, nature's God, the law of God, was the foundation of this republic in the 1600s. The government's authority was insignificant, although it rose from the common law of the land. The law of God and the common law is called the law of the land. The civil law, especially commercial law, is the law of the sea. It is now Roman law that dominates the legal system, which is what we would call positive law or statutory law. It's the law of human legislative systems and those legal courts. In Black's Law Dictionary, found in every law office of the democracy, there is hardly a page that does not make reference to its Latin origins of legal principles. Civil law, Roman law, and Roman civil law are convertible phrases meaning the same system of jurisprudence. Footnote 689. Here, Black's Law Dictionary, 3rd edition, page 332. Okay, so let's take this term common law. And remember, in previous videos, I've made mention that this is kind of a dangerous term today, because at the root of it, common law means your custom and usage. What is the customs and usages of the law of the common man? Now that can become, today your common law is basically this Roman civil law system, because that's what everybody's commonly using. And this has been a gradual change. This originally, what we call the English common law system, had its foundation at Mount Sinai with the law of God from the Bible. But that was corrupted over time. And we'll see that here. I'll show you. Now, this first quote comes from a book I have on the bookshelf back here called, let me scroll up, Missing Links Discovered in Assyrian Tablets by E. Raymond Capp. This quote I'm going to read here comes from chapter 12 of that book on page 199. It says there, referring to the United Kingdom and the USA, basically all Commonwealth countries, common law countries. So it include Australia, South Africa, well, South Africa not so much anymore, Canada. Their legal systems and constitutions are built upon the same common law, which had its origins in the law of Moses, the law of the Lord, YHWH. Hence the fame of American and British justice throughout the world. We should point out that these laws formed a part of our culture long before the Christian era. These facts give us added proof, forming another link in the chain of evidence connecting us with ancient Israel. Remember, the northern kingdom of Israel, the divorced whore, Jeremiah 3:8, were the lost sheep. They were scattered. And Yahuwah gave them a bill of divorce. Now, the southern kingdom, remember there was a civil war in Israel, just kind of like here in America. There was a civil war after King Solomon, and the nation of Israel divided into the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. And, you know, yeah, there was probably some of all the 13 tribes. Remember, Joseph divided into Ephraim and Manasseh, so from 12 tribes it went to 13 when Jacob adopted Joseph's sons. I'm sure there was probably a scattering of all 12 in the southern kingdom, but the southern kingdom was mostly made up of the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, and the Levites. And the northern kingdom were the other tribes, along with a spattering of Levites. And I'm sure there was probably, just like here in America, there was between the southern states and the northern states, there was probably migration back and forth. So I'm sure there's probably all 10 tribes in that southern kingdom, as well as members of the tribe of Judah and Benjamin that went north. But the northern kingdom went really far afield from and was given a bill of divorce, where Judah was not. Even though Judah was being a whore too and was scattered, the punishments on the southern kingdom of Judah weren't as bad as those of that of Israel. I'd encourage you to go back and watch the video I did here not too long ago on why are we waking up now. That will kind of show you some deeper insights into these two kingdoms, and how Ezekiel says Yeshua is going to put these two sticks together in his hand again when he returns to make it one nation. That has not happened yet. Okay, so the common law began in England as far back as 1100 BC, when it was codified by Brute of Troy. Brutus was a great-grandson of Aeneas, a descendant of Judah Zerah. Now remember, Judah, he had a little tryst with a Hebrew princess that was supposed to marry his son, and all of that went awry because the son Onan, I can't remember the three sons' names, but the middle son was already married. The oldest son, Tamar, was promised to this older son. He died because he was wicked. Then the law of the brother is supposed to step in, and the brother was supposed to marry Tamar and give Onan, or whatever, I can't remember their names, but the oldest son that was promised to Tamar, give him a son so his line doesn't, and it'd be called this dead son's son, so his line doesn't work out. But then this middle son had sex with her, wanted to do that, but then he pulled out and didn't get her pregnant, and then he died, and so the youngest boy wasn't old enough to get married, so Judah sent her packing for a while, and looks like that deal went south, so she tricked Judah into getting her pregnant himself, and she had twins, and Zerah is one of these twins. This is the scarlet ribbon story out of the Bible, Pharez and Zerah. So Judah, Zerah, so this is the son of Judah and Tamar, one of the twins. This is not the Messiah's. The Messiah, Yeshua, comes from the Pharez, who turns out to be the firstborn. Zerah is the one that had the scarlet ribbon tied on his hand, but he comes out second, even though he kind of stuck his hand out of his mama's hoochie there, and then withdrew it, and he was actually born second. But these two sons, their descendants through time have been fighting these battles between who's the royal line. An interesting side note, Judah Zerah, you'll see them, their heraldry will be the red rampant lion. A lion, remember the Judah, his heraldry is a lion. And Zerah takes the red rampant lion for the scarlet ribbon. So when you see a lion on its hind legs reared up and it's red, probably somewhere along there it came, their descendants of Judah's era. When you see the gold rampant lion, that's going to be Pharez. And that's where the Messiah, Yeshua comes from Judah through Pharez, King David, and so on and so forth. Okay? So see Genesis 38, 27 through 30. I stuck that in there. That's the Judah, Zerah, and Pharez and Tamar story. The law was again codified by Malmudius about 500 BC. And then King Alfred the Great again codified it. Alfred, the renowned Saxon lawgiver and administrator during the Saxon period, places the divine origin of the law in the forefront. The following is taken from Alfred the Great, which proclaims the law of Moses as the basis of Anglo-Saxon administration. So then we have the King's Laws. This is from this book, the Alfred the Great. Quote, coming then to his task, with this in view, we find Alfred's Code, or Alfred Dooms as they are called, starting with an almost literal transcript of the Decalogue, i.e. the Ten Commandments. The only variations of any moment are that the second commandment is omitted from its right place and stands as the 10th. Immediately after the Ten Commandments come selections from the Mosaic Code, chiefly from the 21st, 22nd, 23rd chapters of Exodus, very lightly modified. Now, why did Alfred do that? Let me do another little sidebar here. The reason Alfred did that was because that was the original contract. The original contract, the marriage ketubah, runs in Exodus where they give consent in Exodus 19, and I've got this old King James book lathered up pretty good. So here where I've put red, this is where the original marriage ketubah begins, okay? And it carries through, that contract carries through all the way through Exodus 20, Exodus 21, Exodus 22. You can see I still have the red here, contract. And it goes all the way over here into Exodus 24 at about verse 8, where the contract is sealed in blood. Okay, so that is why everything that comes after that is an addendum to the original contract because of screw-ups, basically. You know, we can see why did they have to have the tzitzit, you know, the little tassels why do you have to wear a tassel? As a reminder, because you're not writing this law in your heart. So you have to look down at the tassel. Why did God add that law? Well, because you made, you know, these Israelites were making mistakes again. So this contract grows by addendum all the way through Deuteronomy. And technically, the first law of the scriptures. Let me pull this one out so don't want to lose my place. Let me come back here. Whoops. Let me come back here to the beginning of Genesis. Right here. Here's the first commandment. Now, I've written it in English Hebrew, transliteration of mitzvot, which is, you know, instruction. Here's the first commandment. Be fruitful and increase, and fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over all the creeping creatures on the earth. There's your first commandment. This is what, you know, from Genesis 1:1 all the way through the end of Deuteronomy is the instructions of Yahuwah, what the Jews call the Torah. Okay. So this is your contract. Now, see here at the end of it, it says, and he took the book of the covenant. What's he talking about here? This contract from Exodus 19 through the beginning of Exodus 24. And read in the audience of the people. So he's reading all the terms and conditions of the contract. And they said, here's the final consent now, All that Yahuwah hath said we will do and be obedient. And Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, Behold, the blood of the covenant which Yahuwah has made with you concerning all these words. Okay, so people confuse this Ten Commandment thing, but remember, why they confused this is they interrupted him. Yahuwah himself was going to continue reading all the terms and conditions of this original marriage contract, but they interrupted him and said, whoa, we can't handle listening to your voice. Moses, you go up there and you write all this down for us, and then you bring it to us and tell us, okay? So that's why Alfred understood this. That's why he's taking not only the Ten Commandments out of Exodus 20, but he's taking selections from 21, 22, and 23. Remember, it goes all the way up to the beginning of 24 as the foundation of Anglo-Saxon law, i.e. what becomes our common law. Now, let's see how this gets corrupted, though. Okay, let's go here. Remember, Alfred the Great's before the Norman Conquest. This is from this little book here on the shelf, Summary of American Law. It says, before the Norman Conquest of England in 1066, justice was administered in England chiefly in people's courts, the Anglo-Saxon witan. The witan is the Saxon word for white hairs. So they would gather on the full moon. Why full moon? So that they didn't have flashlights, so you generally gather on days that was going to be a full moon, and you would have these people's courts once a month. And if you had bitches between you and your neighbor or whatever, you would come to the witan where your old wise white hairs would sit as your jury of 12, your common law jury. And the law enforced was, in the strictest sense, unwritten. That is, it was handed down by oral tradition. Remember, this is long before Gutenberg's press. We carried, this is why it's a common law. It gets handed down by oral tradition. What did God tell you to do with this law in here? He said, teach it to your children. Every 7 years, the priests are supposed to read the whole thing to you, but you've got to learn it and then teach it to your children. And then there's a law that says every 7 years the whole thing is read by the priest to everybody in the nation, so they can get a refreshing. Okay. So it was unwritten. It was handed down. That is, it was handed down by oral tradition after the conquest in 1066. The king, the Norman king, William the Conqueror, gradually established a system of royal or king's courts. This is this human civil system now, with this human king being the sovereign, the ruling judge, the lawgiver, which eventually all but crowded out the Anglo-Saxon people's courts. Now why? Because they were more efficient. Okay? We get lazy. We don't want to do it. These people's courts take work. You got to be your own lawyer. You got to study this law. Well, I can just hire an attorney. Okay. The theory of the king's courts was that the king was the fountainhead of justice and judges acted as his agents. Purely traditional law, the common law, being administered by the people themselves, does not need to be justified to the people. But the civil law, as administered by judges who are set over the people, God's many, must thus be justified. The civil judge must give his reason or basis for his decision, what we call case cites today, or court decisions. And they're put into what we call the books, the legal books for us to go back and study all these cases to establish precedent. Okay? So this is a little side note here for you. The Hebrew word regma is translated council, but literally means a heap of stones, an altar, or gathering of stones. Remember, stones, you start off your life as soft clay, the potter and the clay, and with time and pressure, like geologically speaking, clay, soft dirt turns into hard stone with pressure and time. So living life, you become wise, and you develop yourself into this witten, this senate, this white hair that is a titular leader, a community leader, because of his wisdom and experience to teach the younger generations. It is from the Hebrew word regem, meaning friend, and is the same three letters of ragam defined stone. Gatherings of stones or living stone altars, you'll see this kind of language of living stone in the New Testament, came together for many different reasons in service to the people. These are titular leaders, people who serve, the best foot washers. Ministerial services, health, education and welfare, judicial services, people's courts, and administering the unwritten law. While Israel was scattered, not knowing that their customs came from Horeb, Sinai, and the Torah. So now we can start to see what's happened. Now let's look at one other document here. I've got a couple of definitions here about this thing called common law, and you'll start to see this twisting here. Again, this is from that book over here on the shelf from that other quote was taken from, the previous one. The civil law system is based on statutes. Very little attention is paid to precedents. The common law system originated in England. The word common dating from the time when the customs from which the English law later developed became common to all parts of England. In a narrower sense, the term common law is used to distinguish the rules which have originated with the courts, sometimes called unwritten law, from those which have originated with legislative bodies, i.e. written or statute law, sometimes also called positive law. In a still narrower sense, the term common law is used to distinguish the rules which have originated in courts of common law from those which have originated in courts of equity. Now you can see that what this George Clark, this law professor, is starting to show you is that as we go from 1066 through time, this common law starts to get twisted. Remember, it's custom and use. What was your custom and usage under the Anglo-Saxon system? Well, we saw that in that first little ditty, that it was mostly the laws of the original ketubah from Mount Sinai. Okay. But now what's happening? After 1066, this Norman king comes in, starts administering justice. The people start choosing that legal system, and you can see that it starts to develop. This common law becomes what we call the rules which have originated out of the legal decisions of the courts. Do you see why this is starting to become a dangerous thing now? Common law, here's another one. Now this is from Black's Law Dictionary. Common law, as distinguished from law created by the enactment of legislatures, the common law comprises the body of those principles and rules of action relating to government and security of persons and property, which derive their authority solely from usages and customs of immemorial antiquity, or from the judgments and decrees of the courts, recognizing, affirming, and enforcing such usages and customs. and in this sense, particularly the ancient unwritten law of England. The common law is all statutory and case law background of England and the American colonies before the American Revolution. Wow, you see how that's really starting to evolve into this blending of human law on top of the precepts of God's law. And it's kind of being twisted now and watered down. Where in even Christianity is insisting that, all that law was nailed to the cross. We just have this civil system now. Common law consists of those principles, usages, and rules of action applicable to government and security of persons. See, now they're even bringing in this civil term persons, and property which do not rest for their authority upon the express and positive declaration of the will of the legislature. Remember, the will of the legislature is statutory, purely civil law, positive law. It doesn't even take into consideration these ancient customs, which are kind of the foundation. Okay? So now, let's come back to this. Today, the public schools and the legal courts and almost every aspect of the lives of the citizens of the United States is manipulated, guided, and taxed by a legal system that mirrors that of Rome, which has conquered the people. Not by the sword, but by their own covetousness. Remember, public schools. How are public schools financed? Through property taxes on the real property that you think you own, that you just merely have an equitable interest in. The state has to educate its persons. The state is the daddy. You and your children are the state's kids. And everybody's got to put in their fair share to finance this kids at the public school. So regardless if your neighbor can afford to pay the property tax or not, maybe they've been injured, maybe they lost their job. There's no grace and mercy here. Oh, you'll get a grace period of a few years before the sheriff comes and takes your property. But if you don't pay that tribute to the master, they're going to throw you and your family out on the street. If you're elderly, even if you've never even had children in the public schools, takes a village, like Hillary said. So, by covetousness, remember I talked in a previous video about, the average cost to educate one child in the public school system across America is around 12 grand. It's probably more now because that was a long time ago. But the average property tax bill was only 3 grand at that time. Well, where's that other $9,000 coming from? And if you have a couple of kids in public schools, it gets even worse because your property tax still stays about 3 grand. But now you're educating 2 kids, which is 24 grand. Where's that $21,000 coming from? Your neighbor's kids. Covetousness. The common law and the Holy Bible have become catchwords of the so-called radical extremists and religious fanatics. Such titles of derision have not been so commonly used by the legal authorities in America since the Tories and Redcoats went back to serve George III. If ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animated contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We seek not your counsels or your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that ye were our countrymen. Sam Adams said that. 690. Samuel Adams. A vast social welfare system, the Corban, that makes the Word of God to none effect, which has grown up in the United States, as well as the burdensome bureaucracy that feeds on and supports it, are supported at the public cost. The true productive laborer who carries the weight of this beastly incorporation staggers with no rest in torment under the infliction of today's Gabai and Mokes, the tax collector. Remember, what's your tax freedom day today now? Almost June, half the year. The result has been a breakdown of the family values, a disrespect for authority of parents, honor your parents, and a cessation of marriage and its preeminence. People now take delight in the imagery of violence, erotica, and moral degeneration found in their two-dimensional modern arenas. Aye, that thing. But I say unto you, that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. See, what the Messiah is saying here is that all sin starts within. We have to choose to shut it off at the very beginning. Where? In our thoughts, in our heart. It's not that we've literally committed the sin of adultery yet. That's not what he's saying. People think that's what he's saying, but that's not what he's saying. It starts with you in your thoughts. And if you let it go further than that, okay? Now, think about this. Is he just talking about the adultery that is on a personal level? But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Think of Revelation. Is there a woman, a seductive woman, riding the beast? Have you committed adultery with that woman that rides the beast? I bet you have. I bet you're part of this system. And we're worried about the mark of the beast when it becomes mandatory, because you've already got it voluntarily. Now you need to start coming out of her, my people. Coming out of her, my people. This whore that you've committed adultery with, that you've lusted after, all of the things that she provides, all the creature comforts. Remember, if you love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude. It is said that we don't actually do such things as was done in the blood-soaked arenas of the Colosseums of Rome, but is the violence not done in the hearts, streets, and homes of our cities? Rome, too, started with blunted sword and choreographed battles in the early arenas. It was all show. It was make-believe. But by the end, they weren't satiated unless they saw blood. The thumbs up or the thumbs down. The voice of the people crying to Caesar they want to see blood. We can now watch in the comfort of our own homes with fascination and patriotic cheers as missiles crash through the roofs and walls in the blood-soaked soil of remote lands. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Remember when they televised the Iraqi war 24/7? You could see all those missiles and all that just blowing the hell up and killing innocent Iraqi civilians. Of course, there is no slavery in the United States, or is there? Employees. See master and servant, this index. Footnote 691. I know that comes out of this book again right here. That's where we'll leave this video off at. So we'll pick up here with your employee identification number, your taxpayer identification number, which is a critical component of that voluntary mark of the beast that's in your wallet right now. Question is are you going to be able to walk away from that? Are you going to establish a system locally for you and your friends and family and network together in the pattern of tens, hundreds, and thousands in order to be able to come out when that time comes? My hope is yes. We'll continue on there. Take care, everybody. God bless.